What is up, folks? Welcome to the latest episode of the Harold McBasketball Show. I'm your gracious host, as always, Harold McBasketball, along with my co-host, I know Ball Paul. Paul, we are both champions on this day, along with the Celtics and the city of Boston. How are you feeling right now?
We did it. We did
We
it.
fucking did it, boys.
Yeah, we live vicariously through our basketball teams, and I am a champion. I put the work in. It's been an emotional roller coaster these, past 10 years, and such an awesome feeling seeing our team finally win the championship. Because in 2008, I remember watching a little bit, but I was not nearly as invested as I am now. I became a huge fan really when we started like the rebuild. Like, I mean, I was a big fan in I remember those Miami series with Garnett, Pierce, Allen. But I truly became a fanatic in those rebuilding years, and it has finally paid off, and it's so sweet.
Yeah, it's such a strange thing because I'm the same way, and a lot of people our age, sure, it's like you could have enjoyed the '08 championship, but not fully. It's like we're all like in middle school at that point. Like the Celtics fandom just couldn't be where it's at now. So it's such an amazing thing to see because I feel like we got into it like during the rebuild. Like I remember like drafting Marcus Smart and then like trading for Isaiah Thomas and Jay Crowder and being like, wow, this team is like really fun. I love this team. But it was so far away from ever being a championship team. And then like these Nets picks work out. We get Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, best case scenario. But then it still just proves to be so difficult to win a championship, even with those guys. It's like, yeah, this is great, but it's so tough to actually then take that final step and actually become the best team in the league, be capable of beating the other like elites of the elites in the NBA. And for a while, like the Celtics just couldn't quite get there. Um, it's one of those things where there are a lot of great teams that just never get over the hump. And although the Celtics are still young and I thought they'd always do it, it's just amazing that it's happened now. And they're still so young. Like this team's incredible now. It's like Tatum's 26, Brown is 27, and they've already won a championship. They've already been to the Eastern Conference Finals a ton of times. They've lost in the finals before. Insanely accomplished careers already for both of them. And it feels like this is the beginning of something amazing. It's like we've got like the next like 7 or 8 years now for the Celtics to keep just running it back and seeing what works. Because I don't know, this team is awesome. I'm so hyped. I can't believe it.
Yeah, I mean, for the near future, I think we have everyone on this roster signed for next year. And then obviously Jalen signed that super max. Tatum will sign his, and I'm sure the core will change a little. Horford is 38 years old, and we'll talk a little bit more about how special it was to see him win it. But um, yeah, man, I think it's the Celtics dynasty, and funny because I think we've talked a lot about dynasties, and we were, and I think we knew the Celtics could be a great team, and we thought they could win the championship, but it feels like the dynasty was under our nose the whole time. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, it felt like we had to get one first before we could like get ahead of ourselves. Because I always felt like this team had, the capability to really fruit organically into this team that's like set up not only to win now, but has like the longevity that a lot of super teams don't, where they kind of scramble to put together some stars at the end of their prime, maybe get a couple good years before it fizzles out. But with the way the Celtics organization has done it by essentially like building around two homegrown talents in Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, and then just like putting the right pieces around them, as they've been getting older and progressing in their careers, it's like all of a sudden it puts them in a spot now to where not only is this team great now, but they can have sustained success for a lot longer than like most super teams we've seen over the last couple of years.
Yeah, and it's so beautiful, I think, also seeing how Jalen and Jason have kind of stuck it out together, and how they've kind of embraced the team over individual kind of narrative, and it's special to see. I was so happy, and I was hoping that Jalen would win the Finals MVP for a few reasons, but just to kind of change the narrative a bit to like these two guys are the focus of our team, and it's not Tatum it's Tatum and Brown. Like they are the two equal leaders of our team. Um, you can talk about who's better. It's probably Tatum, but at the end of the day, like they had to work together and each have their great moments to finally win the championship. And I don't know, the way they embraced it was really beautiful, and obviously like contributions from one through like seven or eight. I mean, Kristaps, Drew, Derek, Richard, Horford, Hauser all contributed like really meaningfully. So beautiful. It's not only about winning the championship, the way we did it, I think was truly special and so cool to see.
Yeah, it's such a great team effort. Like it felt like everybody contributed massively. Like everyone touched the floor. Like even Sam Hauser coming off the bench was like massively impactful every time he came in. It felt like dude would just like he couldn't miss a three. He felt super, I would say like encouraged by the rest of the guys on the team to like take those shots and make an impact on the series. Pritchard in like no minutes has like two full court buzzer beaters that were absolute just daggers to the heart of Mavericks fans. He's an absolute killer. And like the team just like plays together so nicely. And I think that was kind of like the biggest thing that I noticed in these playoffs. Whereas in years past, it kind of felt like, maybe like Tatum's hot this game, but as a result, and Brown isn't. They never really like flowed super well off each other. But this year it totally changed. And I think a big part of that is because Tatum's passing was so good. Like he averaged like 7 assists a game in the finals. Like he was moving the ball so well. And it just opened up everything. So it's like not only do we have like Jaylen Brown just like attacking in transition, but like he was making like awesome cuts off Tatum, getting open in the corner, and even vice versa. I think Jaylen Brown also averaged like 6 assists in the finals. So both of them were like moving the ball so well to where it was no longer this like scoring competition between the two. They were both just trying to find the best looks for everybody. And as a result, I think both of them got better looks because of it, and same with everyone else on the team. So it was really just a phenomenal team performance. Feels a little Spurs-esque, with just everybody contributing across the board, 1 through 5. And I love this team. And Brad Stevens did an absolutely spectacular job constructing it. Like getting KP and Drew Holiday was like ridiculous. This team just got so good with those additions.
I'm glad you brought up the Spurs because I do kind of like those comparisons where um it's team over individual, and Jason Tatum is fifth best player in the league in that area. Jaylen Brown, you can argue is maybe top 10, top 15. But the finals are often won by top three guys, and oftentimes it's one guy doing a lot of the work, and there's a second option that's usually pretty good. And it's rare that we see such a team effort and led by kind of someone that's not a top guy. In recent years, it's been Jokic, it's been Curry, it's been Giannis, it's been these superstars. And obviously the Spurs had like Tim Duncan and stuff, but it was towards the end of his career, and it was just the whole was bigger than the parts, and that's kind of what it felt like this time. Um,
Yeah. It's a really interesting thing. I saw a stat today, and I don't know what the exact number it is, but it's like the vast majority of teams that have won since like the beginning of the 2000s have had someone who's already MVP on their team. Like it's like 90% of it, because like you've got tons of wins going to the Heat with LeBron, or, Steph Curry and Golden State, Shaq and Kobe with the Lakers. Like pretty much like all these teams have MVPs. Like very few championships have been won without an MVP on the team. So it feels special. It's a real testament just like how great this team plays together. It's truly a special team. Like this Celtics team is incredible. And the advanced stats like tell you that they are like legitimately one of the best teams ever. As far as like wins, point differential goes, defense, efficiency. Like this team is just spectacular, and it's awesome. There's just like a million great players on it.
yeah, to think that Kristaps, who's our third best player, missed. I think he missed all but 3 or 4 games. Um,
Yeah.
I don't think any other team can say that losing their third best player, they would be able to dominate, yet alone win the finals. So it's just a testament to how good of a team we are. And I always believed in this team, but I think I always hedged my bets and said, I don't know. I thought the Mavericks were going to be much more competitive. Um, but I should have believed because they've been showing it all year, and they continued to do it in the playoffs. And um, I think special shout out Derek White as well. I really feel that when we traded for him, that was like the big shift into team basketball, and he's such a glue guy. And to me, that's the moment I pinpoint where this championship team really started to form. And then obviously, the Drew Holiday Kristaps was the final touches there. But um, Derek's just selfless play, always playing the right way. For me, he's kind of my MVP.
I love that. Yeah. Or Derek White's face too. It got absolutely mushed into the hardwood by Derek Lively on a loose ball. I'm sure y'all have seen the pictures, but like both of his front teeth just like absolutely demolished on the play. A true warrior. Like that is somebody that any championship team needs to have. And yeah, he's just like this like he's a classic Spurs player. Like that's why it's such a finesse, like taking him from a system like the Spurs, because he super selfless. Somehow became like a really good 3-point shooter. Because I remember when we first got him, he was like probably like a 26% shooter or something like that from range. Shot 40% in the playoffs. Like dude was absolutely lights out. And he just does like the winning plays. Like he hustles hard on defense, grabs rebounds, gets a couple of assists, always hits the big shots. Like I feel like he hit so many just like dagger threes when like the Celtics were going on a run to really stifle the Mavs. He does it all. It's like it's insane. Like it feels like all of the starting players for the Celtics contributed so massively to this series. And I feel like almost like all of them could have been like in the conversation for MVP. Because even like because Drew Holiday was also like ridiculously good. He was like he always got open in the dunker spot to get passes from Tatum for easy layups. Played amazing defense throughout the entire playoffs. Closed out tons of games with his defense. Um, Tons of rebounds. I think he had like 11 rebounds last game. Sneaky averaged like 7.5 rebounds a game in the finals. He was ridiculous. And then obviously like KP had some injury struggles, but he was good when he played. And like Al just came up so huge with KP hurt, playing like almost 40 minutes per game in the playoffs. Hustled super hard, got like very timely buckets against Gafford a couple of times. Also shot 40% from three. Like everyone played, the role players played so well for the Celtics. That's the real reason that they were able to win this series so easily.
Yeah, and not to discredit Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown, but like they didn't have the craziest finals performances. Like I mean, they had great moments, and Tatum's passing was excellent, but in terms of efficiency,
Terrible. Both are terrible. I have like the
very
numbers here. It's
terrible.
like
Yeah.
Tatum shot 39% from the field in the finals. Jaylen Brown shot 44% from the field. It's like also very inefficient. Tatum was 26% from three. Brown was 23% from three. Like both like not shooting well at all. But then like to go through some of the other guys, it's like Drew Holiday, 54% from the floor, 42% from three. Derek White, 40% from three. Sam Hauser, 48% from three. Al Horford, 47% from three.
Wow.
So it was really all like the role players like getting open off of their drives, which were super impactful. But like really like some of their greatest impacts was just like being facilitators for the rest of the offense. And then just having like Derek White, Drew, and Al just like rake in the threes off open looks from them.
Wow, I didn't realize it was
Huge disparity.
yeah,
Huge
wow.
disparity between the stars and the role players as far as like shooting percent went.
No, yeah, the role players absolutely won us this series, but obviously Jalen and Jason, you can't understate their impact there, and playing both ends just to have two-way superstars like that. You mentioned briefly how Drew was in the dunker spot. I thought that was just kind of a cool thing that we did to kind of keep their fives more spread out and not camping in the paint. And Drew did such a great job. I mean, getting rebounds or even getting the dump off
Insane.
pass. And
Insane. He got so many offensive rebounds, so many dump offs from JT where JT would just find him and like Drew's just like wide open under the hoop as they try to both double team Tatum. Because whoever is guarding Drew like doesn't usually really know how to play defense there because like he'll usually be guarded by like a guard or somebody. So they just collapse on Tatum and he's wide open. So he was playing awesome. Tatum was making all the right reads in those situations. It was a really interesting offense. I think Missoula really crushed it with how he game plan for the series.
yeah, um, yeah, no, I mean, I'm still kind of soaking it all in. I'm hoping to go to the parade, but I might be working, and I don't think anyone's going to cover my shift, unfortunately, but whatever.
Yeah, I would love to go too, but I'm stuck in Houston right now and I'm off to Wyoming on Saturday. So not gonna be able to make the flight out to Boston for the parade, unfortunately, but it's all right. I'll be there in spirit. I'll be following the live streams online, keeping up with everything on Twitter. But I'm sure the parade is gonna be electric. Cue the duck boats. They're coming out on Friday. Let's go.
Ugh, yeah. No, I really, yeah. I love this team so much, and I think I'm gonna buy myself a little Derek White jersey. I never buy jerseys. I don't own any jerseys, but I think I am gonna pull the trigger because I'm in love with that man, and he just plays he, how I just I love guards, and I like guards that play like him, that are just efficient, pass first, smart guys, and seeing him get curb stomped, I feel like it's only right that I honor him.
Yeah, forever a Boston legend. There are so many guys here that are very worthy of like buying a jersey for. Like I love getting like role player jerseys, and there's so many good role players on the Celtics team. Because like Holiday would be awesome, Al would be amazing.
Yeah.
Um, Pritchard would be kind of cool. One of my buddies had a Sam Hauser jersey. And I'm like, that's awesome. That rocks. Um, Something else like I want to allude to too that I think was like a big switch up for the Celtics team is like obviously like we've talked about how like massive the moves were, but I feel like there was also just like a big philosophy shift with this team where it kind of went from being this like really gritty defensive team, but like not totally cohesive on offense under Ime, where like the offense was kind of a little more like ISO ball, Jason Tatum goes, Jaylen Brown goes, to then like Missoula comes in, he's like, let's recreate this instead of just being this like smash mouth defense team with like Smart, Tatum, Brown. Let's just put shooters around Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and let them work. And like that's why the trades like getting Drew and KP were so huge because then all of a sudden the shooting was just ridiculous. And Missoula's strategy was like so clear from the start of the playoffs where he was like, we're just going to shoot more threes than the other team. And the advanced stats are going to say that we are more likely to win this series by doing so. And it totally worked. And something I kind of thought of is like, I'm curious if it was like inspired at all by losing to the Heat in the playoffs last year. Because I feel like that's exactly what the Heat did to beat us. Whereas like they didn't have the better team, but they just took and made more threes. And because of that, they were able to win the series and get to the finals. So I wonder if Missoula kind of tracked that and was like, okay, like we have better players. Like, what if we just also kind of do that and keep up the 3-point fight with better players? And it worked very nicely this year. So I don't know if that was the inspiration, but I thought it could have been.
Yeah, and it also happens that every guy on our court is like an elite defender and
Totally.
can almost switch like four positions. But yeah, that is funny. I almost forget like what our offensive identity was last year. I feel like there was less ball movement and there were definitely a lot less threes shot. Um, and yeah, you heard it over and over again, and there was definitely an emphasis on just pulling the trigger, and but it felt like there was far more just ball movement, and um Masball proved to be the answer. And like you said, I remember the Ime Udoka days where it was like surrounding guys were, Grant Williams, Marcus Smart, Al Horford. It's like very different, more of a defensive emphasis there. So switching to kind of an offensive emphasis has been cool to see for sure.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if teams are going to try to copy it. I think they will, but I think it's going to be hard to compete from a personnel standpoint because like the Celtics team is just like engineered perfectly for it. And honestly, like for it to all like work perfectly, you kind of need a big man like KP who's also just like huge, great shot blocker, but also lights out from three. Like he is like literally just like the perfect piece for this team. And it's crazy that we didn't really get to see this team at its full potential in the finals because he was dealing with injuries. Because like what we saw from him in the first two games was like really special. Like the offense was unstoppable with him, and he's still like by far the best plus minus of anybody in the series because he was just like so good in the minutes that he played. So I don't know. It's like I'm excited to see this team play again next year because there's definitely like a little bit of talk this year. People being like, well, the East was injured. It's like, well, we didn't have KP for like the entire playoffs. Who's like our third best player. Like this is like a 20 points per game scorer who hardly played in the playoffs for us. So as dominant as the Celtics team was this year in the playoffs, I think they can be even better next year if KP's healthy, which I
Yeah,
know is a bit of an if. I know that it's kind of the KP thing where he tends to get injured, but God, I'd love to see him for a full playoff series.
Yeah, because it was a healthy KP season relative to the past, and he's been fortunate and had some decently healthy seasons the past couple of years. Um, but before that, it was lots of injuries. It's only really been this year and last year on the Wizards that he was able to play, I think, like 60 games, which is considered pretty awesome for him. But what I love about him is and not to critique our offense because it's amazing and we dominated, blah, blah, blah. But KP does add that I love the post up in the mid range.
Oh,
That's
totally.
something that
Like seeking mismatches too in the mid range, just like getting someone way shorter on him and just hits the mid range over them so easily.
it adds such a different dimension because I think sometimes our offense tends to be a little too much driving kick and it's great and the 5 out is awesome. But Kristaps is the one that truly brings like a different element and he's able to he's extremely efficient out of the post and just literally hitting the shots over the heads of smaller defenders. Um, he attracts so much attention and it's I don't know. I feel like we're of course at our best when he's playing like that. That's when I really see us as an unstoppable force.
Yeah, and he's like the ultimate bailout option. Like if we're in like a dry spell on offense, which like still sometimes happens, where it's like, maybe we're just like not getting great looks at the rim, the threes aren't falling. It's like we can always just turn to KP and just be like, you can just take a mid range. Like any mid range you take is a good shot for the offense. So it's just the ultimate bailout and really like an amazing addition to the offense. But I will say, like, even without him, like Al like held it down so well. Al was legitimately so good in the playoffs and the
Yeah.
finals. The dude is out there doing everything as he always does. I'm so happy that he got a ring. Totally deserved it. I think he was it's like at the time he was like second all time for like most playoff games played without getting a ring. He's officially off the list. It's
Yeah.
back to just being John Stockton and Karl Malone as it should be. They're the two biggest playoff losers ever. So I love it. I love it. Great for Al. And it sounds like he's coming back again next year, which is fantastic. Because I can tell he's still got some juice left in him. Like he's too good to think about retirement yet. And like the Celtics still have such a prime opportunity to run it back with this team.
Yeah, Al just turned 38. I think I saw a TikTok, I forget the creator, but he was pointing out how um second to LeBron, I mean Al Horford's longevity is LeBron is in a league of his own. Let's pretend he doesn't
LeBron was
exist.
drafted 4 years before Al, which is crazy.
Right. But no, I mean Al at 38, there are no other players right now playing at his level. I don't think there are any 37, 36 year olds playing at Al Horford's level. So um, aside from LeBron, I think Al Horford's longevity has been um, super impressive and it's a big part of it is just becoming like an incredible 3-point shooter when thankfully when he joined the Celtics and um, we see that he's still like a pretty impactful defender. Al's defense I love. I think he gets away with a lot of hand contact, but he gets away with it, and I love it for him. He's very
Yeah.
grabby, and then he'll just
Being able to
suffer.
get away with that though is like part of being like a good defender, I think.
Yes.
Kind of like knowing like what you can get away with and what you can't get away with. Like it's not like he's getting like a friendly whistle. It's like that he just plays it so perfectly that it's
Yeah.
never enough for the refs to call, but it's enough to just like stifle the other team's offense.
Yeah. No, Al Horford is a master of that. But yeah, sometimes I do watch him play. I'm like, damn, he's getting away with murder here because
No,
he'll just kind of put
I'm
his
so
hand
I'm
on
so
your hip.
biased. Totally. I'm so biased when I watch Al. I'm like, nope, electric defense every time.
And regardless, he is an electric defender. Um, I don't know. Do we touch on the Mavericks or do we just kind of bask in
We should talk Mavericks for like a hot second, then we go back to basking in the glory of everything. Overall, like still an amazing season for the Mavericks. I think like the scale is just kind of tipped in favor of the Celtics. I think they were the better team. But there is like a world where this series could have been more interesting. Like, because for example, like game three was like down to the wire. That's the game that Luca fouled out of. And like, although the Celtics had played better that game, they potentially could have stole that game. And had they done that, like, who knows what happens with this series? Celtics still probably win, just more likely in 6 or 7. Um, so I think like this is still a very respectable playoff run for the Mavericks, especially like considering that like most people had them out in like the first or second round. I think I had them as like a play-in team at the start of the year. Like the expectations were not very high for this team. So for them to go all the way to the finals, like that's super impressive. And although like there have been like some critiques as far as like Luka's play went in the finals, like as far as like defense went, maybe some of the shot selection and just like jawing with officials. Luka's amazing. Like Luka, I think is still very arguably the best player in the league. So things are very bright for Dallas right now. It's really looking up. And I think Luka's so good that he has to get a championship at some point. So I think the Mavs are doing well right now. They just need to kind of like stay on course right now, keep this core together, make slight tweaks where they can. But like really, if they just run it back, I think they still have a good chance.
Yeah, no, Luca was incredible all series, and
So
um,
annoying to watch though. Oh my God. Like as like a Celtics fan, like the foul baiting was like driving me fucking insane. Like it felt like every time he went into the paint, he was just like looking for a foul, trying to flop a little bit. Like he was just like and I get it, like that's part of being like a great offensive player is like being able to get to the free throw line, but like, oh my God, it was so annoying.
yeah, what I respect about it though, and I don't respect much about it, but he gets off like great shots after like he initiates the foul, like
That is
something,
true.
like I remember Dwayne Wade or some of the other foul baiters. It's like sorry that you caught a stray there, Dwayne Wade, but like a lot of times they would take the foul and then just like huck completely. Like Luca always has the poise to like it feels like an and one, like
It does feel like half of them are and ones where it's like,
yeah,
yeah, he would kind of like foul bait, do a little pump fake, jump into the contact to try to draw the foul. But it's not like he's just like jumping into like the contact and then just like flailing and throwing the ball. Like it legitimately felt like half the time those converted into and ones. So, it's not like the foul baiting is not as bad as other players because he is still like trying to make the shot, like often does, which is just like he's so good. It's crazy.
yeah. I lost my light right there, but whatever.
That's
Um,
all right.
Yeah, Luca still had an incredible series. We saw Kyrie struggle a lot more, and then a lot of the Mavericks role players that kind of took them this far a little bit fell off a cliff, but that's almost to be expected. I mean, we're talking about Derek Jones, PJ Washington, great additions to the team, but you
Yeah.
know, it would
They're
have
not
been
gonna yeah, they're not gonna carry you to a championship. Like yeah, especially like Derek Jones Jr. Like from the start of the series, I was like, we're just gonna leave this guy open the entire time, right? It's exactly what Missoula did. Like every three he took was just like wide open. And it's like they were giving like probably more minutes than they should have to like Dante Exum. Granted, like they didn't have a ton of options. Like I think they do probably want to get a little bit deeper this offseason. And Exum did play very well, I will say. He always came in and made a big impact, but it did feel like they were thin. It's like they really needed Kyrie and Luka to both go off in the same night to have a chance at winning. Because outside of that, it was like too much to ask of, Derek Jones or PJ Washington to like really step up and be the difference maker. So it still feels like they could get a little bit deeper this offseason, but they're close. They just need to make some moves around the margins.
yeah, I agree that it just needs some tweaking, but at the same time, there is kind of an issue with the amount of, I think, usage that Doncic and Irving demand, and then it's just about surrounding them with the best defense and the best 3-point shooting you can get, and then that's kind of tough to come by, and you're kind of walking a line of finding a player that's happy in that role. Because yeah, like guys like PJ Washington, Derek Jones Jr., they are like great defenders, pretty good shooters, and I think they're happy in that role. Like how much can you upgrade where it's still gonna work? I don't know, but
Right, right. It would be tough, but luckily they're in a good enough position now to where like they're no longer on the hunt anymore to like find someone to pair with Luca. Like it feels like they kind of have the core with like Kyrie, Luca. I think Washington's a great fit at small forward for them. And then like Gafford and Lively are both awesome in the playoffs. The Celtics did a really good job like shutting down the lob threats, but they're still both very impactful and clearly play really well with Luca and Kyrie. So it might just be like kind of finding another power forward to play instead of Derek Jones Jr., who might give you a little bit more shooting. And then like either like hoping some guys off the bench develop a little bit more or finding somebody else because they definitely got like crushed in minutes where Luca was either out of the game or when they'd like lean too hard on the bench. Because there were definitely like some times where like guys would come in, like sometimes like Tim Hardaway Jr. got the run for that night, and sometimes he was good and sometimes he was bad. Sometimes it was it Josh Green? Like he played really well in the last game. Like he didn't really get minutes in the other game. So they don't really have a consistent bench rotation other than the trade-off between Gafford and Lively. So I think there's room to improve there a little bit. But like that's all I'd be looking at doing. Like I'm not looking to bring in another star to this team right now. Like
Mm.
I think they kind of have enough firepower. It's really just like working on some of like the offensive efficiency around Kyrie and Luca.
Yeah, no, you're right. And little special shout out to Derek Lively, who is
He's
19,
awesome. He's really
19
good,
years
dude.
old.
Yeah, he's justified the tank. He justified them like throwing away an entire season to ensure that they kept their own pick, which from the start I think we all kind of agreed was the right thing to do because they were going to be like 10th seed. They're going to be a playing team anyway. But yeah, he's incredible. He's exactly what they needed. Like very much like Nick Claxton build where he just like hustles super hard, gets tons of rebounds, great lob threat, does all the right things, and he's super young. Like who knows like what his ceiling is. Like this guy could be really good.
Yeah, I think he will be. And he has like a cool. Okay, cool is definitely the wrong word, but his mom had passed away, and just like I remember him getting drafted, and they talked about like his mother's battle with cancer, and then she passed away,
Yeah.
I think, a few months ago. Um,
Yeah, pretty much like right before the playoffs. I think he missed like the last like probably like 5 or 10 games of the regular season because of that, and then came back for the playoffs. So that was a good story, and like he's a good guy, and like he plays so hard out there. Like that's a player that like any team would want to have. He was just the perfect fit for the Mavs, who were beyond desperate to find someone who could play those starting center minutes. So having him and Gafford is quite the luxury.
yeah, no, showing that much of that resilience and kind of that emotional toughness, like I can't imagine, and to do that at 19 years old with the amount of pressure, like I don't know. Big shout out Derek Lively. He's someone I had my eye on since he got drafted because I was kind of intrigued by his kind of college career where he didn't have much of one. He was injured a lot and then he was picked really early. I was like, oh, who is this guy? And he's just surpassed expectations. I thought he'd be a lot more raw, and he is a polished, you know, awesome lob threat five. Yeah, maybe he's what Duran. I hope and wished Duran would be, but I'm still a big Duran guy. I love Duran.
Yeah, yeah, very, very similar archetypes there. I think kind of like the last thing to touch on for the Mavs, like the overall play of Kyrie. Like I've seen him get a lot of slack because like obviously he didn't play amazingly in the finals. Um, but like I think it's a little like short-sighted to put too much blame on him considering how good he was in the rest of the playoffs. Like he's a huge reason why they made it to the finals. Um, and like he still had like some big gutsy shots. Like he was still felt like he was contributing a ton throughout the series. Um, and I don't know. I think it was more so a testament to like the Celtics defense and like Kyrie struggling. Like we just had like our defenders are just like so big and just built to guard guys like Kyrie. Like the whole time, like he's going against like Drew Holiday, maybe the best point guard defender in the league, or like Derek White, who is also an all defensive player this year. Like that's just a big ask. Like, yeah, he's probably not going to play as well. Like he's literally going against like the best defense in the league. As far as like I say like the most capable defense to guard point guards in the league is what I would say, because maybe Minnesota is a slightly better defensive team overall.
Yeah, no, I agree that it was a maybe a bit overblown because of how good of a run they had up until that point, and Kyrie's such an incredible player. But like you said, I mean, we just threw everything at him, and Drew and Jalen and even Derek White are such suffocating defenders. I mean, Kyrie's getting a bit older, so um,
Yeah,
you
he was
know,
also a class act. He was a class act at the end of the series. And it's like a funny thing because like a lot of like Celtics fans like hate Kyrie for like how things went down with him coming and leaving. Um, I've never felt that way. I don't know. I weirdly like still like Kyrie a lot. So no bad blood on this podcast. If you want to come on, Kyrie, we will welcome you. We'll talk ball. We won't be assholes. Open invite.
yeah. Yeah, no, Kyrie's a funny one, and for me, like his quote unquote villain arc, which I don't buy into his villain arc, but like he made some controversial statements, and like there's kind of some weird, I guess, like religious things going on. But as far as his tenure on the Celtics, I mean, what I think the main thing that happened is he said he would resign and then he didn't resign, which is like that sucks, but like I don't know. That seems like
It's also his fucking life. Like he can do whatever he wants. Like
yeah.
if he decides he doesn't want to live in a city anymore, like that's fine. Like we do it all the time. We're like we have a job and we're like, I want to work for a different job now. I want to live in a different city. Like everyone has the right to do that. So
Yeah.
I think it's totally fine.
It's just funny that he took it upon himself to like announce it to the crowd and
Yeah, maybe that was unnecessary, but maybe at the time, like he truly did believe like he was sticking around, and then season doesn't go as expected. Kevin Durant calls him, and Kevin Durant is like, "Hey, you want to play together in New York?" He's like, "Oh, that sounds awesome. I hadn't really considered that as an option. Like, yeah, I want to do that." Um, so I don't fully blame him for that. I still like Kyrie. Tough series for him, but he's still an all-time great player and easily like a first ballot Hall of Famer. Like the dude's got nothing else to prove in his career.
yeah, showing that he can be like the perfect number two next to LeBron and next to
Yeah,
Luka is a
yeah.
pretty huge achievement.
And
And
also just like beautiful basketball to watch as always. Like, he wasn't super efficient, but like when he was hitting shots, like I don't know, man, just like some of his layups and the 3-pointers he was hitting, the cross up is still as good as ever. Like him and Luca are both just like so awesome to watch.
yeah, yeah, I think the hatred towards Kyrie is very overblown and even with some of his like, little controversial statements, as much as like I get where some of the anger came from and he's got like the weird Israelite like thing. I like I don't even want to try to unpack it, but I think it is overblown overall. Like I don't think he means any like harm or he's really trying to be like any sort of, I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's a good bookend for it. We still like Kyrie. But like maybe I wouldn't feel that way if the Celtics lost to the Mavs, but since we beat them, I'm like, it's fine. It's all good. We got our championship out of it. So yeah, we can be cordial now. Should we do a quick part two for this and just like go through a couple of random stats I put together?
Sounds good.
Have
Yeah.
one final victory lap for the Celtics.
One final victory lap. All right, be right back.
Let's do it. All right, back for our final victory lap. Just talking about how great the Celtics are. I have a couple fun stats to throw out there. A lot of them are just from NBA.com. But I think they're like really fascinating to look at. First one is that the Celtics ended the season with a record of 80 wins, 21 losses. That's between regular season and playoffs. That is 13th best all time. Kind of crazy. And then even better, they ended the regular season and playoffs with an average point differential of 10.7, which is fifth all time. And in the last 30 years, there are only two other teams to do it. And it was the 2016, 2017 Golden State Warriors, obviously one of the best teams ever with Kevin Durant. And there was the 95, 96 Bulls, considered to be maybe the best team of all time with Michael Jordan. And the only other team is the Celtics. Like this Celtics is like in that category with those teams, as far as point differential, which is like a great stat just to show like how good a team is overall, like how badly you're beating opponents, how good is the combination of your great offense and great defense. And the Celtics are right there, which is like crazy.
That is crazy. I didn't know some of that. 13th weirdly seems kind of I know that's impressive, but like what are those other teams that had better regular season and postseason records? I mean, I know the Warriors and probably some of those Bulls teams, but like, damn, who else?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have the full list in front of me right now, but yeah, I guess there are a couple other teams. Who knows? Maybe it's like I don't know, maybe they're like some better regular seasons that made it like a little bit easier. Because although the Celtics were like dominant this regular season, it's not like they were pushing for like the best regular season record of all time. I
True.
think it's really this like dominant playoff run that like pushed them to the forefront of a lot of these conversations. But I don't know, other stats would allude that even like regular season alone was like remarkable. The next one is um in the regular season, they averaged 122.2 points per 100 possessions, which is the best of all time. So this is the best offense of all time, according to this statistic, which is absurd. It is like worth stating that, like, of course, like the offense in the league has been getting better and better each year. So it
Yeah.
kind of makes sense like a more modern team would hold this record, but it is like this Celtics team. Like this Celtics team was more efficient per 100 possessions than like the 2016, 2017 Golden State Warriors team. Like that's how good this team was.
Wow.
Pretty cool. And then like the last cool one to throw out there, there's more of like a personal stat, but like in the regular season, the Mavs averaged like 118 points per game. In the finals, I think it was 99. And for all four losses, they were held like well below under 100 points. So it's like in the finals, like the Mavs were averaging 20 less points per game than in the regular season. So the Celtics defense was really just like shutting down their entire offense throughout the finals.
Yeah, that's crazy. And I think especially in the game last night, the last game, it felt like, I mean, both sides seemed tired, but man, the Celtics are just so suffocating defensively, and then for Luka to have to carry so much weight on offense, like that's very tough to do, and we saw how that played out. But yeah, the Celtics are absolutely suffocating, and then they run in transition, and like, Tatum and Brown are athletic freaks, and then guys like Derek, guys like Drew are also just physical, fast. Like they're probably so
Oh yeah.
hard to play against, and so frustrating to play against, and so exhausting to play against.
Yeah, the transition play was so good for the Celtics, like specifically in the finals. Because like obviously they're a team that like takes a lot of threes. And that was kind of like their identity going into the finals, but they really like picked apart the Mavericks in the paint in those first couple of games. Whereas like, yeah, they shoot a lot of threes, but the reason they do is because they set them up beautifully with these great drive and kicks. Whereas like Tatum and Brown would just blow by the primary defender, go into the paint, and then from there it's like they'd either hit like a sick layup or they would kick it out to one of the shooters. And it worked beautifully. And you really saw like the transition game in full force um the other night in the closeout game because like the Celtics were forcing so many turnovers. I felt like every turnover was just immediately a dunk or a layup for Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown. Like they were torching the Mavericks in transition. That's a big part of their game. It was really cool to watch.
Yeah, and Jaylen Brown particularly, I think, improved so much with his dribbling, and he had some of the nastiest
So
crossovers.
good. So good. You never saw his head down when he was dribbling. You never saw him fumble the ball away with his left hand. You never saw him drive into traffic, resulting in a bad turnover. He literally cleaned up all of that in one season. Like you heard all the hate after the finals against the Warriors. So I guess 2 seasons of cleanup. And then it's like by now it's like he's just like a far better player. He just didn't see any of those holes in his game. And they won Finals MVP, which is crazy, crazy.
No, I really think the gap between him and Tatum is closer than it's ever been. And
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know. And I mean, I think Jalen obviously won the MVP, so he was the better player in both the conference finals and the finals. But maybe going forward, I hope that they're both kind of talked about with the same amount of respect, and that Jalen starts making those all NBA teams because the way
Crazy he'd make it. Crazy that like fucking Devin Booker made it over him. Like
yeah,
absurd. Like the Lakers and the Suns both getting two all NBA players and the Celtics only getting one was absurd. I think the voters realize that now. Sometimes there's a bit of like a legacy bias when it comes to voting. And now I think Jalen's gonna get good bias now that they've seen that, he's a champion finals MVP. Like this is someone who should be on the ballot every year. So I think that changes now, and the voters have realized the error in their way. But yeah, he was not getting nearly the respect that he deserved this season. And even saw it before, like when he got the max extension, everyone was like, "Wow, what an overpay! Like is Jaylen Brown like a max player?" Yeah, yeah, he is. He's Finals MVP. Like, what else do you want from him?
yeah. It feels like in recent years the awards. I almost wish they would wait a little bit longer and into the
Yeah,
postseason because even like I don't know, Doncic probably should have been named MVP last year. It should have probably been Jokic over Embiid.
totally agree.
Um, the flaws are definitely exposed in the postseason. Like it's one thing to be the best player in the regular season, but I feel like the best players are really put in the light when it comes to the postseason. So
Yeah, and you really get to see all of it too. Like, you can follow as best as you can in the regular season, but you're not gonna be able to catch every game. You're not gonna really watch what the players are doing every single night like you can in the playoffs.
yeah,
And yeah, I don't know, when the playoffs come around, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's like the realization of like what happened in the regular season, like how much of it was like true, like what's like a reality. And like the reality is like yeah, like Luca like legitimately was having an all-time great season. Like there was no stat padding. Like what he did for this Mavericks team was ridiculous. A team that nobody thought was going to be good. Um, and yeah, same with Jaylen Brown, where it's like people are like, is he having a good season? It's like, yeah, he is. It's like, yeah, his stats are like a little bit lower than the year before, but they just brought on two new All-Stars in KP and Drew Holiday. So it's to be expected. And like maybe people weren't watching enough also to like realize the defense he'd been playing all year because it was very evident in the playoffs that he's also an elite defender.
Yeah, I mean, he was guarding the best player for most of the series, and the entire playoffs. I think Jalen took the brunt of the defensive matchups.
Yeah, him and Tatum are such a special duo, and I think they've got like such a good mix of the two of them where it's like they just play so nicely together now and they complement each other so beautifully. Thank God we did not trade one of them because like that was definitely a discussion a couple of years ago where it's like, do you move Brown for Kawhi? Do you try to move him for KD, Anthony Davis? Like, what's the move? And now it's like so obvious that like right now it's like you'd rather have him over any of those guys. Not to mention he's also like 8 years younger than all of them.
The Kawhi for Jalen trade ideas, that was a funny time. I forget when that was like really prevalent, but
That was
I do
always
remember.
disgusting. It was like, yeah, it was obviously like the season he got traded to the Raptors, but like everyone knew it was a rental. It was like it was literally going to be one of the worst trades ever if they did it.
Yeah, I don't know what side of the argument I was on, and I think maybe it's for the best that I don't remember and I don't want to know. But I'll for my ease of mind, I'll assume that I was saying we should keep Jalen. But yeah, man, it's young players, they hit their prime 25, 26, and you never know how good a player can be because I imagine back then I saw how dominant Kawhi was. I couldn't have anticipated the injuries, and Jalen was still quite raw even just a few years ago. So I probably was saying, let's get Kawhi. Fuck it.
Totally. And like same with, like Durant discussions, like 4 years ago, like I probably would say yes to that. I'd probably been like, yeah, we trade Jaylen Brown for Kevin Durant. Luckily we don't work in the front office. This is why we're not there. There are more qualified people to do this job. Special shout out to like Danny Ainge too, who like also did help build a lot of this team. I do think it took the transition to Brad, and like a slight like philosophical change, as to how to actually build around Brown and Tatum to like get us to the finish line. But we don't get to where we are without Ainge doing that initial Nets trade. So he was definitely also a part of this. Like there
Yeah.
were like a lot of important dominoes that had to fall over the last like 7 years to get to where we are here.
Yeah, Danny Ainge drafted Brown and Tatum. Like
Yeah.
those are
Yeah, and like neither of those were like gimmies either. Like, because we had the first overall pick in the Tatum draft, traded down, took him at 3. Obviously, like we would take him at 1. I think it's insane that like anybody thinks that we weren't taking Tatum in that draft. But still, like he orchestrated that. He reached for Jaylen Brown. Like Bill Simmons, like hated that pick. Bill Simmons was like, "Why are we taking this project at 3? He's projected to go at like the 10th pick." Um, there was like some kind of package that was offered for that pick. It was like Nerlens Noel and like Jahlil Okafor, and Bill Simmons was like, we should have taken that, um, which is crazy. But like luckily we had like the right people in the front office at the time to make the right decisions. Then also we end up with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum on this team, and they're still here, and they're both still young, and they're both champions now, which is ridiculous. And we're champions as well. This podcast is a championship podcast now.
and yeah, you said we shouldn't be in the front office and we most certainly shouldn't. But like, like Jaylen Brown and we are also not in our primes yet and we're learning and we're studying as much as we can and then we're talking and bouncing ideas and I think we could be one day great front office executives.
I think we still do better than a lot of front offices out there. I just don't think we could compete with what the Celtics front office has done,
Right.
because they've legitimately been masterful. It's been like some of the best team management ever in assembling this team. But like, we could do better than like the Hawks or something. Like, come on.
For sure we could do better than the Hawks. Anyway, uh feels awesome. Any other little things? I mean, I'm seeing a lot of TikToks and kind of images compiling all the players that have come through our team over the years and I kind of love those because it does feel like you said it's been kind of a domino and it's kind of snowballed into this um championship, but you gotta look back at the Tyler Zellers, um Just have
Kelly
us out.
Olynyk.
The Kelly Olynyk, of
Give
course.
Kelly a little shout out. You know, we didn't have that game 7 win because of him against the Wizards. Like, who knows if this ever happens? It's all a butterfly effect. But yeah, no, and it's been nice kind of seeing a lot of those ex-Celtics players like, making tweets about the team because they're still like, because a lot of them got to kind of see like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown go through this whole process. Like you saw like I saw a tweet from like Isaiah Thomas today, Marcus Smart. They're all like super supportive. They all still bleed green, which I love to see. I miss those guys. I wish they could have been on the team when we won it, but as we kind of alluded to, like there were a bunch of like necessary dominoes that had to fall for us to get here. Some sacrificial lambs, as sad as it is, but yeah, the team is there now, and everyone over the last 8 years played some kind of role in getting this team to where we are now.
Not to open a can of worms, but the sacrificial lamb, and we just mentioned Marcus Smart. It is interesting to think about how getting rid of him might have ultimately benefited us. Maybe that's overblown. I
Oh,
don't know.
totally. But the trade was also like a complete fleece because like looking at it now, it's like even just trading like Kristaps Porzingis for Marcus Smart straight up is
Yeah,
not a fair deal. Like Porzingis is so much better. And we also got back 2 picks in that and used one of those picks to get Drew Holiday. Like it was legitimately like one of like the most masterful off seasons by any management team ever. It was ridiculous. Um, but I do think I kind of alluded to this earlier that it's also like a little bit of a just like a philosophical change with how this team was going to it was like an identity change. Like we went from this like smash mouth defensive team with Marcus Smart at the helm, not necessarily like running the best offense or most efficient offense ever. And then Brad was like, we're gonna move off of him, bring in KP, who although is like also a great defender, very efficient offensive player, fits this new scheme. Bring in Drew Holiday, much more level-headed, a lot more efficient, brings the same defensive intensity though, and really just like resculpted this team to have like a cleaner identity, a more efficient offense, but still one of the best defenses in the league. So as like sad it was seeing Marcus go, um, it was a great move, and it was evident at the time, and is even more true now.
yeah. I do wonder, like, if you swapped him and Drew Holiday just last year, how different it would have been. Um, Marcus is beloved by all Boston fans, but he was kind of well known that he
He's a shot checker. He doesn't take good shots, and he's not
was a bit of
efficient.
a shot checker.
And like and I think like on a championship team like this, knowing your role is so important. And immediately like KP and Drew knew their role. They're like, we're here to take good shots and play off of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Whereas like Marcus, like in the fourth quarter, it's like there might be a minute left, and you're like, God, like, I'd love a Jason Tatum three right here. And it's like 5 seconds on the shot clock, like Marcus Smart is throwing it up. And it's like that's just like not going to get you a championship. Like you really need to know your role. You need to know who your best players are. You need to know what's going to give you the best chance of winning. And although like he did make winning plays sometimes on offense, sometimes it worked. Made winning plays on defense all the time. It's like we kind of just need we just need more out of that. It's like with someone like Drew, it's like not only is he also making the winning plays on defense, but he's also making the right plays on offense, which is really all we needed out of that point guard position.
Yeah, that was said beautifully. I think sometimes the winning play is just giving the ball up, Marcus. Like,
Yes.
because he did kind of he sculpted his identity out of making the winning plays, being the emotional leader of our team, and that came at a what's the word? It could bite us sometimes.
Yeah, and I think there also might have been something to like moving off Marcus to where, um, it's like because like, do you want Marcus Smart to be like the leader of your team, or do you want it to be like Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown? So it's like Marcus was definitely needed when they were younger, but like once Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown were old enough to essentially be the leaders of the team, it kind of made sense to move off Marcus, um, to allow Tatum and Brown to be the vocal leaders of the locker room. And I think it still is kind of like leadership by committee there. Like a lot of people say Al Horford like might be the leader of that team. Um, but I don't know. I don't know. I feel like it was like an important transition to kind of be like this locker room is now open for Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown to kind of um, be the leaders of.
Yeah, yeah, and that's so cool in itself to not have one guy that's the proclaimed leader. You just have the veterans and Drew and Al that contribute, and then um, I think Jaylen Brown is soft spoken, but also he's just like a very intelligent, very like uh I don't know. I think he has very natural leadership qualities. Whereas
Yeah.
Tatum, I assume, is a lot more soft spoken and kind of just leads by example.
Yeah, I think so too. Sorry for slightly bashing you, Marcus. I know you're a big listener of the podcast. We still love you. I think
I
you're still
love
gonna be
you.
amazing for the Grizzlies. I just think it was an important transition for the Celtics to make though, and I think it ultimately worked out.
Yeah, and I think he can play a similar role there in Memphis, kind of being an emotional leader early for Bane and John Morant, and then in a few years they can get rid of Marcus and win their championship.
Yes, exactly. Anyway, closing thought here. Let's go out with a bang here. So Celtics just get their first championship. Obviously, like the core is still staying together for the foreseeable future. How many rings do you think Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum can get together? What's like the number as a Celtics fan that you're eyeballing now? Are you satisfied with one? Like, what's like the number for this to be like, this was like a very successful team we put together, potential dynasty? Like, what's the number you're eyeballing?
Um, I don't know if I'm answering this question the right way, but I feel like if they just win one more, they really cement themselves as like not a dynasty, but like, if you do it more than once with like the same core there, I think it really cements them and their legacy as like an all-time great team, which is crazy because two might not seem like a lot, but I feel like, you
Oh,
know,
totally. Winning one is like so hard, which
right.
is like why this like question comes up now. Cause like pretty much before this, like my thought was like, God, if we can just get like one championship out of this team, that'd be amazing. Cause there's so many great teams that just never go on to win it because it's so goddamn hard to win the finals in the
Yeah.
NBA. So they've got one now, which is like awesome. And honestly, like if they don't get any more, like I'll still be stoked with the one that we got. Like thank God we got one. But this team's been so good for so long that I think two is very reasonable and like three is like my ambitious. Like if we can get
Yes.
three rings out of this team, like that would be awesome. I think it's possible. That's what I'm hoping for. But yeah, well, we will see. We will see.
I think one more ring for me cements them as like, you know, as a dynasty, as like a legendary group, and anything more than that, I think then you start having some crazy conversations of best team ever. Not maybe the best team ever, but um yeah,
Yeah, well,
one more championship would do a lot. I think one championship has already really shifted the conversation into Jalen and Jason's individual legacy, and then one more championship, we're talking about this team as like an all-time great team.
yeah, I totally agree. It's like with one more, it's like because like with this, it's like okay, this is clearly like one of the best teams of like the last decade. But like if you get another, then the conversation kind of expands, and it's like, all right, as far as like dynasties go, like how does it stack up? And then when you get to three, it's like very few dynasties have ever actually been able to do like three rings. It's like then you're talking like Bulls conversation's hard to get into, but then you're kind of talking like Warriors, Lakers, like teams like that. So we'll see. It's a very bright future for this Celtics team right now. I'm super stoked just to see how it plays out. I'm stoked with the one we got, but I think this team is so good that they're definitely capable of getting more championships. We'll just have to see what that number actually is.
Yeah. Yeah. I am excited for what the future holds. I guess as kind of a concluding note, I feel like this is the season finale of season one of the Harold McBasketball Show. I can't wait to get into off-season talks, but um, I think it's been so fun doing it, but also I think it's going to be so cool to look back, especially our first year podcasting, to have it end in a championship. We started early in the off-season, and we've just, sometimes we waited a couple weeks in between episode. Life happens, but ultimately, I thought we were pretty consistent, and it's just going to be so cool to look back at the journey of this season.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's like we followed so many awesome storylines and to kind of like have the season turn into this where it's like our Celtics, who obviously were kind of hyping up from the start, end up actually winning it all. Like you can't script a better not only NBA season but podcast season. Like what a run for the podcast. We really crushed it. We had some awesome takes too. I'm very excited to kind of like go back and like look at the takes we nailed. Maybe look at some of the ones we messed up on. That's be really fun for some of the off-season conversations. And obviously like we have the draft coming up soon too. So we'll still have some more content, although we might slow it down a little bit in the off season, go to Cancun or something. But Yeah, what a year for the podcast. The podcast has been amazing. You have all been amazing fans. Thank you all for, liking, subscribing, listening, all those great things. We really appreciate it. And it's just been a lot of fun. So I hope you guys have had fun too.
Yeah. God bless to many more championships and many more seasons of the Harold McBasketball Show. For season one, that's it. God bless.
Thank you as always, fans. Peace and love.
Peace and love.